to Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons, founder of Unlock the Magic, Coaching, Healing, and Marketing. I'm joined today with Nikki Smith. Nikki is an ANELDA, certified death doula, and a grief coach, serving the terminally ill, dying, elderly, and their loved ones with dignity and respect. Born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, she is driven to her commitment to give back to the community and help those suffering with grief and loss. Nikki volunteers her spare time with a local hospice and serves on the board of directors for Let the Light In, a nonprofit organization that provides support for women who have suffered pregnancy and infant loss. She also hosts a weekly podcast to destigmatize grief, Good Grief, with Nikki, the death doula. When she's not helping others, you'll likely find her backpacking deep in the woods. Nikki, welcome.
Hi, happy to be here.
We've known each other for a bit. When did we both join FPC? Okay, for those who don't know, Nikki and I are part of an awesome collective of podcasters called Feminist Podcasters Collective. Check us out. There's a website, and it's all about lifting each other up, amplifying each other's shows, and just a rockin' group of people. So
yeah. Well, I joined maybe a year ago. I think it's been close to a year ago, something like that.
Funny? I don't even know, and I don't know how.
I know I do a lot of different networkings and groups and stuff. And it was like, oh, how'd you find us? I'm like, I don't remember.
Yeah, probably something out on social somewhere. And
probably, who knows?
Which is a whole nother thing. I recently moved all of my business and personal away from all things Meta. So that's been an interesting transition and shift in figuring out where I want to show up. And ideally, it's like building my own ecosystem with my website and podcast.
Same.
Yeah, that's what calls to me. It's like, how's your heart? What's going on today?
My heart's a little chaotic right at this moment. I've had back-to-back meetings all morning, so it's just been like a little chaotic. I don't know. That's one of the facets of being an entrepreneur is you're doing 20 different things every day. So, not everybody, but some people. I am specifically. So trying to refine my focus throughout the day is something I've had to learn to do since I left corporate America.
Yeah.
You know, with a nice, juicy 9-to-5 job, you get one maybe set of tasks, but you have one job and you just chill out with that for a day and then you go home and, you know, that's your focus. And I'm focusing on 10 different things every day, all day. Some of them sad.
Right. Within your work. And I want to dive into that. It's funny you say about corporate. I fully acknowledge that I worked hard in corporate. And I look back and it's like, wow, how easy was that? Like, I could literally phone it in and always get paid. I don't say that as like a jab to anyone, but it's like, wow, it's just so different. And now it's, to your point, like recently I had some good burnout. I say good burnout because I was doing all great things, but I was working every day of the week. And then I was like, oh, shoot, I haven't taken a day off in a minute.
Yeah.
And I had to completely crash and like the universe paused my new clients. I'm like, cool. All right, let me sit with this.
Yeah. Self-care is important. Gotta take time for yourself.
What is a death doula? How did you get into it? And something that I feel we're moving into, and I want your thoughts on this, is similar to maybe like a birthing concierge or doula, or someone that's there specifically to help you through energetically or spiritually. It's not a nice to have. It's actually pretty essential, and I feel many people aren't necessarily on the essential train yet. They're more on the like, oh, that's nice to have.
So first of all, I'll get to your first question. A death doula is actually, a lot of our trainings are based on birth doula trainings. So, because death and birth are both labors. They are a process. So much like a birthing doula, we are there to provide the non-medical and holistic support for the dying and to their loved ones to just kind of help them get through that end-of-life process, through the labor of death, so to speak. And that can look like a million different things. So I do consultation work just to help people understand what hospice is and how they can start and what services they might need. But I like to lean on social workers for that stuff. My work is more emotional and spiritual in nature. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean necessarily religious, just so we're all in the clear.
May I share something on that?
Please.
So I've talked to so many incredible women on the show that is specifically on the birth side. And they're the ones in the room that can shift energy at a moment's notice. So when you say spiritual, the energy of the room, not just vibes, but literally it can make the entire difference on the person's experience. Everything kind of slows it down a little bit and says like, okay, how do you feel? How how's baby feeling? How's mom feeling? How's everybody feeling? And if someone's out of alignment with that vibe, they're out.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of what I do during my process of getting to know my clients and their families is understanding their spirit, understanding what their vibe is, to put it in layman's terms. Like what's your vibe? Like what makes you tick and where's your heart place? Like what is your heart place? So that when things go off the rails, which in birth and death, things can go off the rails and they do. I know that. And I'm not just using my spirit, my spirituality. I'm using my inner peace and my gifts as an empath and a compassionate human being and all that. But I use that to tap into their spirituality to bring them back to their safe space, not mine, theirs, so that I can match that energy to where they are best suited. What were the other questions? So that's what a death doula is.
So how'd you get into it? Were you always in medicine, healthcare, the process?
No, not at all. I got my degree a million years ago in theater with an emphasis in performance. So my background is in theater and directing and comedy, which obviously made the sequential order to put me in an IT job in corporate America because that makes the most sense, right? And I got comfortable. I stuck there for a long, long, long time. And it got to a point where I was burning out. I wasn't happy. I hated it. And the rest of my life was being affected by it. Then COVID happened and I was stuck at home all day. And I got to that point where I'm like, this is my opportunity to leave this environment that's toxic and I'm not happy in. And I have always volunteered in different places. I've volunteered for hospices, nursing homes, the suicide hotline. I've always given back in some capacity to people who need. I'm passionate about service work and heart service work, but it's always been one of those things like that's just something you do as a volunteer. It's not a job. And I knew what death doulas were. And it was one of those things like I didn't realize it could be something I could do. It's still not quite a full-time job. I don't know if it ever would be. And I'm totally okay with that. But yeah, so I found Enelda and I did my training through them, did their certification program, which is not necessary to be a death doula. And there are a million trainings out there. That's just the one I chose because it was the most robust, had the best information and support afterwards for starting your own business. Hung my shingle, so to speak, and been practicing ever since.
It's similar to coaching. You don't have to be certified or credentialed, but I chose that route because unfortunately there are a lot of people out there in every industry.
Sure.
Cash grabbing or bad actors. And it was like, okay, so let me just add a layer saying that I've invested in myself for others.
There's a bit of a divide with death doulas on that. Some people are adamantly against it. They're like, I don't need this thing. And I agree to a point, but
Yeah.
to your point, it does kind of just weed out the people who are just casually saying I'm a death doula and they have
Right.
zero training.
Right. That's interesting as me as an energy coach, quantum energy healer. Everyone's like, how'd you get to be that? I'm like, well, part of it was my soul contract is like why I'm here. But in the 3D, that's not really understood. So I'm like, well, I've always known I've been a healer of some sort. And now I've been able to understand more of what that means and be able to hone it in. But I think I feel your vibe on this. You can't fake spiritual connection and
Right.
healing and movement or energy movement.
Well, and there's always those people too that when they see certified by your name, they feel a little more comfortable with it. They're like, well, if she's certified, she knows what she's doing. I
I
mean,
know
there are people out there who are not certified death doulas who've been doing this way longer than me and are
totally.
just as valid, if not more so than I am.
Well, right, because if we look back to indigenous medicine shamans, they didn't have a certification. So it's like a both and for me. Do I have to have it? No, because I trust in who I am and my abilities. And when I was leaving corporate, I was like, I gotta get it certified. I was still in that mode. And then what would you say around both from a birth or death doula? Those who say it's a nice to have, why is it essential?
So, especially specifically with death, I think having a death doula is essential or somebody in that capacity. It doesn't have to be specifically a death doula, but I think we can all agree, mostly in Western cultures, we don't talk about death and dying, right? We don't want to deal with it. We want to pretend it doesn't exist. And same with grief. We let somebody else handle all that. This is why we've moved away from caring for our own dying, our own elderly. There's also a disparage in, the number of people over the age of 65 is bigger than it's ever been. Not enough caregivers. We don't live in a culture where that's viable anymore to have 4 generations in one house. It's just not totally feasible at this point. So we've moved away from that. So now we have places where we can stick our people until they die, to be blunt about it.
No, but and that's what it is. That's what it feels like, and it feels horrible.
And here's the thing, most normal people don't love the idea of putting mom in a nursing home. Nobody likes that. But there's no way I could have my mom or my dad, either of my parents, live here with me. I would do that. Like I would live with them to care for them if they were at end of life. But I have a 2-story house. We have one bathroom and it's upstairs. And there's no feasible way to have them in this home. And my husband and I both work full time. So then they'd just be here alone. What's the point of that? And I can appreciate that, like I said, we're just not set up as a society to do this anymore. So death is something that sits over there. So when it does come to us, when mom or dad or, grandma, whoever it is in our lives is now approaching end of life, we don't know what to do. And having those conversations with your parents or close loved ones isn't as easy as most people would like to think it is. I'm comfortable talking about end of life with my parents. They are not as comfortable about it. They've gotten better. My brother died unexpectedly, and that kind of woke them up to like, okay, death is something that happens. So we have had these conversations. But if you're watching mom fighting cancer and you might not recognize or might not be comfortable with telling her, if you're done fighting, it's okay. So to have somebody who can come in and recognize that and say, let them know that they're okay to advocate for themselves, that they don't have to continue treatment, they don't have to continue fighting. If they're ready to start the dying process, let's start the dying process. Because you're not going to get that from your doctors. You're not going to get that from oncologists or any medical care team because death is a failure. And your family's going to want you to continue to fight because they love you and they want you in their life. But if you are tired and you don't want to fight anymore, just having somebody to help you advocate for yourself or to be your advocate for you to say, look, her quality of life is terrible. She's tired and she's ready to go.
This is such an interesting concept because I was raised, death is scary, death is this, that, and the other thing. And through my spiritual alignment and awakening, my perspective has significantly shifted. And this has to do a lot with energy healing as well, like not being attached to anything in the 3D. And I understand that someone who just had a loss, if I were to stroll up and say like, oh, they didn't go anywhere, they're still here, they just shifted. Well, that's not helpful. That hurts.
Yeah.
That feels cold.
Right. Yeah. I was just talking with somebody else briefly about, I have a whole podcast episode on what to say, what not to say to people who are grieving. It's one of my top episodes. And it's, again, this is our society. We don't talk about this, so we don't know what to say. And we say stupid things like it was all in God's plan or this happened for a reason, when that is a very hurtful thing to say. But if I were to give advice to anybody on like how to approach somebody who's just suffered a significant loss, if you don't know what to say, keep your mouth shut. But if you feel like you have to say something, recognize before you even open your mouth that you have no idea how they feel right now. There's no way you can know, even if their mom just died, but your mom died last year, you and your mom have a very different relationship than them and their mom. And their deaths might have been very different. You have no way of knowing what they're feeling. They might be joyful. They might feel relief. They might be really, really hurt. They might be sad. You don't know. So recognizing that first and foremost to say, I have no idea what you're feeling right now. If you need somebody to talk out your feelings with, I'm ready to listen. But be ready. If you offer that, be ready.
Yeah. My go-to is, are you hungry?
And that's offering specific help because
something,
the other thing, everybody, if you need anything, let me know. That puts it back on them to know what they need. And they probably don't because grief brain. Right. And 2, then they have to think of it and then ask you. And nobody likes to ask for help. But if you offer specific help, like, hey, how about I take your kids out for ice cream so you can have a day off tomorrow? Like, I'll take your kids to the zoo for the day. That's always a big one I offer. Like, let me take your kids to the zoo for the day so that you can have a day to yourself to do whatever you need to do, like grieve or go party. I don't know.
You're helping me understand that there's something around food in me, because recently my best friend's dad died and I just showed up with a couple of egg bakes and I was like, here you go. That maybe was like an old tradition of just showing up.
Oh, yeah. That's a Midwest thing too, because we're both in the Midwest. That's what we do. We give food. We show up with casseroles.
I just showed up with some egg bakes and they're like, wow. And for the next few days, they didn't have to worry about breakfast. That's awesome. Like, whatever.
Or offer to get groceries. Like, hey, do you need some milk? I'm going to the grocery store. I'll pick you up some bread and milk and toilet paper. Let me grab those things for you. Is there anything else you need while I'm at the grocery store?
I like this something specific.
Yeah. And if you are the person who have just suffered a loss, just know that people are going to come up to you and say, if there's anything I can do, please let me know. They're going to say that, say thank you and move on. Don't poop on them for that. But if people say that, remember it. And then that day when you're like, the health department's going to give me a citation because I haven't mowed my lawn in 6 months. And, John down the street said, if there's everything I can do, I'm going to call John and be like, John, can you please come help me mow my lawn? I can't today.
I think I would directly respond like, bring me French fries. I would actually tell someone if someone's going to ask me anything they can do, I'll be like, mm-hmm. And I'll genuinely respond.
Shot of bourbon for me, please.
Can I have a beer, French fries, and maybe some buffalo cauliflower wings, and we're straight.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's like never assuming where someone is.
Yeah.
And follow their cue, I would say.
Yeah.
Even if we're in like I could feel my friend's energy, literally feel her body, and I just sat still and quiet while she cried. That's it.
Yeah. And sometimes if somebody is in front of you and they are really emotionally upset, they're crying, they're like, don't shush them. Don't try to tamper that down. Let them, if the best thing you can do is let them keep crying. Let them keep screaming.
I was like, more, please. Come on.
Yeah. Get it out. Because like stopping them or stifling those emotions is a huge disservice. Let them not only feel them, but let them know that they are safe expressing those emotions in front of you.
I later learned that she hadn't had a breakdown yet because she was supporting everybody else.
Yep.
So she was like, just thank you for letting me cry. I'm like, sure, anytime.
Yeah. That happened to me when my brother died 10 years ago. I never even thought to grieve because my parents lost their only child, or not their only, their oldest child, and his kids lost their dad and his wife lost it. It was like everybody else had these big losses. I'm just the sister. So I spent all this time focusing on them and their grief that I never even thought about my own until several years later when it all came out, and it was very messy.
I bet.
So
you felt it.
Yeah.
So what does innovation look like as a death doula? Or like what's an ongoing something? What's considered innovation or what's new?
Okay. Oh, I got that.
Okay.
I got you, girl. The biggest uphill battle we all have right now as not just death doulas, but as a society is legalizing medical aid in dying. Currently, it's only legal in 10 states and Washington, D.C. And there's one state so far who has instituted a change to their state constitution that it will never be allowed there. Thank you, West Virginia. And a bill was just introduced here in Ohio for the same thing. So we might never have it legalized here. Go Bucks. Getting it legalized in more states is what a lot of us are working on right now. There's a lot of great organizations out there that are trying their best to get bills introduced to legalize it and to make it okay, because this is not something I feel like the government should be controlling.
So what you're talking about, let me make sure I understand, is legal aid to...
So, okay, let me try to describe it so it makes sense. Medical aid in dying is the ability for somebody who has a terminal illness with 6 months or less to live to obtain the medicine they need to end their own life. And most people are like, oh, assisted suicide. We try really hard not to use that turn of phrase because that has such a negative connotation. And that's not what it is. This is a medical assistance in hastening your death. The death is already imminent. It's going to happen. It's just going to happen on your terms versus whatever the illness's terms might be. And this is great and huge for people who have very aggressive forms of cancer, because I don't know if you've ever watched somebody die from cancer, but it's awful. And there's a whole lot of suffering involved that is completely needless if this is something that is available. And here's the great thing about medical aid in dying. It is optional. Nobody's going to force it on you. You don't have to use it. Just because it's there, you're perfectly allowed to let nature do what it wants to do. But this is just an option for people who have a terminal illness, who could be suffering a very painful death.
I think it's pretty amazing because especially in a place where our healthcare is going in the opposite direction, if you do get diagnosed with something, I mean, you're not just looking at a physical uphill battle. Like you're looking at like every part of your life being impacted, especially financial or otherwise, because who knows where we're heading in terms of like coverage, and somebody could drop you. And
so part of the way medical aid in dying is framed is that the stipulation is you have to be able to ingest the medicine on your own. So basically, it within your hands, and you are taking that power yourself to take the medications that will, end your life at that point. Nobody will give it to you. I mean, they will hand it to you, but you have to take it yourself. You have to be of sound mind and body. You have to pass a mental competency test. Like there's a whole lot involved. It's not super easy to obtain. So there's a lot of red tape to get through. And then you're approved, then every state has a different waiting periods. You might have to wait a day, you might have to wait a week or 2 weeks before you can actually receive the medication. You have to ingest it yourself. Nobody will give it to you.
I would imagine that folks that are super attached to mainstream religion, they will never get on board with that because they're going to see that as taking their own life.
Yeah, but no.
Mm.
So I don't know. I've known plenty of people who have strong Christian values that are all in favor of it.
Wow.
And that again, we can't generalize because I'm
Sure.
sure, like obviously within the Catholic religion, suicide is an absolute no-no. That puts you right to hell forever. So
That's what I meant. Like probably the mainstream.
And again, yeah, it's hard to say though, because there are some that might adhere to those beliefs, but would still be okay with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're actively working toward that.
That's what we would like. I mean, call your senators.
I was going to say, like, what does advocacy work look like for that?
So it's awareness, first of all, because like everything, when somebody doesn't want something, they'll spread misinformation about what it is. And they make it sound like, these evil people that are with medical aid and dying are going to come to your house and murder you. That's not what happens, obviously. Or they want to come kill grandma. So it's a lot of information of like what this really is and what it means and how it works. That's a big part of it. And then obviously advocacy for here's how to contact your senators and your legislative peoples, your governors, to tell them that this is something you believe in and you want available.
Where are the states that have it available right now?
So West Coast, Oregon, Washington, California. East Coast, we've got New York, Vermont, Maine, New Jersey, Montana, I'm pretty sure. Like I said, District of Columbia. And I know there's a couple others I'm forgetting.
But now that gives me a good idea. So
yeah.
I'm surprised Illinois is not.
They're working on it in Illinois because Illinois is one of those funny states because it tends to be very conservative, but you got Chicago, which tends to blow things into a more blue area.
I was just talking about this during the election. I'm like, oh, Illinois would 1,000,000% be red if it weren't for Chicago. That's why so many people in this state try to carve us out. Like there have been many attempts to carve out Chicago as its own.
All the gerrymandering going on in Ohio, because we're the same way. If it was not for Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, we would be a totally red state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. All right. We roll with it. I want to go to a post that you made recently on LinkedIn, and it hits close to home for me because you're promoting an event about how to avoid caregiver burnout. And what's happening in my world, my mom is in between dementia and we'll see. She has OCD, depression, psychosis, narcissism, dementia. Like it's like a whole mix of stuff. And
there's a lot there. Okay.
A lot. And so, and from a mental health perspective only, there's not the places that you can go residential anymore just for around the clock mental health. Those are really only wards of the state and for kids anymore. And then she's at the point where like a nursing home isn't quite a good fit either because again, she needs round the clock, but like more mental health attention, and there's just nowhere for her to go. And so what it looks like is my dad doing the best he can. And I talk to him about this a lot, is about how are you taking care of yourself? How are you finding joy? Because mom, unfortunately, like I think that this is the state of what it will be until who knows? And so it's like literally up to my dad until he wants to put her somewhere. And I'm like, that's up to you. Like, you're the one caregiving. Like, it's not me to say. But he's a boomer and thinks like all this is hogwash. And he's like, well, I made a vow, so I'm doing this. What I sense will happen is that he will decline rapidly because of the caregiving and that he's not at all focusing on him. And there's really nothing that I can say or do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Caregiver burnout is very real, and it can go exactly like you just said. People their own quality of life is going to go down, and they might have their own battle with illnesses or just health decline because they're not taking care of themselves while they're caregiving. And there's that mentality, like you just said, he's in the baby boomer generation. He's like, I made this agreement to take care of my wife until the day she dies, and that's just what I do. And I can respect that of anybody. Because I work with people who are in their 80s or so who are of that generation. They have that same type of mentality, and they're not going to ask for help. So that unfortunately leaves it up to the people around him to not force help, but to come in and be like, I'm doing this today, Dad. I'm going to take care of Mom for the day. Or, a brother coming and be like, Dad, let's go watch the game. Don't mean to be gender specific here, but.
And it's my sister and I, and I'm not close geographically. She is. And so the thing about that is, and I'm not refuting what you say, absolutely. My sister will come over and my mom will want nothing to do with her. She only wants she refuses anyone but my dad.
And you'll get situations like that. And especially if you, like you said, dementia, when dementia or Alzheimer's comes in, it gets that much harder because you bring in a stranger. And already, like, if they're to that point where they're not always recognizing family members, they might still say, this is the person that's here every day when I wake up. They're safe. And then the nurse comes in and it's a different nurse than last week. And who the hell is this person? So absolutely, it's terrifying. And I'm not saying it's easy. There's no easy fix to any of this.
No, but like, I guess like where I was thinking about for this, not only just caregiver burnout, but my mom is reaching a place where there is no good answer. There's no answer for her quality of life at this point in time. And it's going to continue to get worse for her and my dad. All of those combined, it is very stressful to even be in her presence.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I just try to be there as much as I can for my dad.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the best you can do, especially not being geographically close, like you said. Like, I hate saying this. It's only going to get worse because the baby boomer generation is so huge. It is one of our largest generations, and the discrepancy in the amount of human beings in that age group versus our age group and our younger age groups is huge.
And to your point, they're living longer, and we have 4 big generations. Millennials aren't in a place where we can take on the care. I'll speak for myself in this situation as a millennial. I can't take that on, and we're just not equipped any longer. And so to your point, we're going to run out of space, and people aren't going to be taken care of, and it's going to get worse, and everything's on the line right now, especially from a perspective. So.
My aunt is in her late 80s with Alzheimer's, advanced Alzheimer's, and the wait list to get into any memory care facility is ridiculous. There's just nowhere to physically put people, and this is if they can even afford to pay for it.
Right. That's it. Exactly.
And I'm Gen X, so I'm only a little bit older than you, and I'm not like I said, I would love to take, but I don't know how I would even consider being able to take care of my parents.
Right. So for your aunt, what does that look like? Does she have a caregiver? And
she's currently living with her husband, who is
just trying the best
everybody's doing the best they can with the situation at hand.
That's what I keep saying too. Everyone's just doing their best.
Right. And, yeah. I mean, her husband's in his 90s. Like he can't provide the level of care she needs at this point.
I find one of the biggest discrepancies specific to like my mom right now. There's no good answer right now for elder care, mental health mix.
Yeah.
And the answer was they did shock therapy, but it just declined her more, cognitively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where we are, folks. And
all the things. I was just talking with somebody earlier. I feel like we're all in that beginning scene of disaster movies where they show the shot of this tsunami just like off the coast where we can't quite see it yet, but we heard there might be a tsunami coming and it's there, but we're all just trucking along with our lives, just waiting for the wave to come. And
I'm absolutely not trucking along. I feel my fucking feels every day, and that's the biggest thing. I think that I'm a lighthouse, and that doesn't always look like happiness. I'm a lighthouse for like, okay, the storm's bad today. What do you need? Like, or what do I need? Or how can we weather this? There's no good answers right now.
Yeah, I'd love to be like, we're all going to be okay with just some deep breaths and yoga. Yoga's not going to get us through this.
No, that's why I go back to many times, like what I'll talk about is going back to basics every day. And it's not putting lipstick on a pig. It's like genuinely especially when there was like biting cold last week. I am grateful for heat and hot water today. I get to be grateful for that. So it's like going back to the basics if you can't find anything around you that feels good. So as we start to wind down, what would you say to everybody right now that is doing the best that they can? And I think that applies to every single human on this plane right now. And with the caveat of Nikki, what would you share with the people that are doing the best they can as it relates to caregiver or caregivee?
I mean, just that you're doing the best you can. And we do this with a lot of things in our lives. We don't always have the right frame of reference in our minds, so we make comparisons and you look at other people and other situations and you think everybody's got their crap together and I don't. Nobody's got their crap together. We're all out there floundering. We're all doing the best we can. And especially when it comes to caregiving and caregiving, there's no right or wrong way to do any of this. You just do it. That's all we can hope for. There's no right or wrong.
There's a question I meant to ask you earlier. What is the difference between a death doula and hospice? Do you work together, separately? What is that?
Yeah, so we work in tandem. Hospice is a program, so it's going to be a whole lot of different people, a lot of different specialties. You've got nurses, social workers, chaplains, aides. Some hospices will have in-home care for like laundry and bathing, things like that. Whereas the death doula is going to be more of your companion and your guide through the whole process. There are some hospices in the world that have doulas on staff, which is lovely, and there are some that don't. Of all the people I've worked with, hospice has been involved and they have been amazing. They love having me there. They are not adverse to me being there. And also, hospice is not going to be in your house 24/7. Most people have that misconception that like, oh, I'm going to hire them. They're going to be, nope, they're going to pop in twice a week. And they can't necessarily be there to hold your hand through the entire process, which where somebody like me would come in.
Yeah, so you actually literally help them process what they're experiencing physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So like if they start seeing or feeling
Yeah.
folks that have passed.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing. Hospice nurses are like second to God, in my opinion. They are amazing. There are some bad ones out there, but there's bad ones of everything. But I've watched them in action. They're beautiful human beings, and they will absolutely reassure family members and people who are dying, like what they're feeling is normal and okay, and explain like this means mom's getting close now. So,
Nikki, as we start to wrap up, where can we find you or support your work?
my website is nikkithedeathdoula.com. You can come there and check out all my stuff. Everything I have is linked there somewhere. So I have a podcast called Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula. That is available on all the platforms. So Spotify, Apple, Amazon. I have a virtual space for caregivers now. There's a link to that on my website, and I'm happy to share that with anybody. It's just basically, I don't want to call it a social network because it's not quite like that because it's very closed in, but it's a safe space where those who are caregiving can come and commiserate with each other. We have support groups live over Zoom. I have workshops, other stuff going on. So that is all there for you to check out.
Closing remarks.
Well, I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anybody, but we are all going to die one day. So keeping that in mind and remembering our own mortality is the best way that we can embrace and live our lives to the fullest as we have it now.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, you're welcome.